Hi there, I'm Corey Osuna. Let's get started sewing your shirt.
First, let's identify our pattern pieces. Place both pieces of fabric on a tabletop surface in the same manner as you see here in the video. Feel free to push pause. Now that you have both pieces of fabric laying on a tabletop in the same manner as the video, take a close look at the neckline on each. Notice the shirt front at the neckline has pleat markings. These markings are straight lines about 2 inches long. The shirt back does not have pleat markings and the neckline is higher. Now let's put the back shirt pattern piece away and let's focus on the front. We are going to identify all of the parts. The center front neckline, once again, has 2 straight lines made in chalk that are pleat markings. To the right and left of those lines, you're going to notice the shoulder seam, and you will then see the sleeve hem. Following downward, you're going to see our side seam and then the shirt hem. Once again, these markings are only located on the wrong side of the fabric for our shirt front only. Now that we know all of our parts, let's take our shirt front only, fold it in half, and head to the machine. Now it's time to sew the pleat in the front of your shirt. Place your fabric under the presser foot. You are going to line the sewing needle directly on top of your pleat marking. Turn the sewing wheel towards you to lower the needle. Stitch 2 or 3 stitches forward and back. Now sew down to the end of your pleat and add another back stitch. Lift the presser foot lever, pull out your fabric, and cut your thread. Let's have a look at your finished pleat. It's just a straight line with the back stitch at the beginning and end, but it's going to look fantastic on your shirt. At the ironing station, let's give it a good press on the front and on the back. At the ironing station, simply pick up your shirt and flatten the pleat with your thumb on the front of the pleat and your fingers on the back. Now that you have separated the pleat, half of the pleat depth is on the right, the other half of the pleat depth is on the left. Give it a good press. Add some steam and flip it over and press the other side. Looking good. Let's move on. Now that we have separated our pleat, half on the right, half on the left, we've given it a good press. Let's sew across the top. This is going to be a stay stitch at the very top edge. So notice the placement of the fabric. This stay stitch will be 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let's have a close-up look at the same thing. Well done. On to the next step. Zigzagging the neckline. Place your fabric so that it is under the center of the presser foot. Lower the presser foot lever. Turn the sewing wheel toward you so the needle is in the down position. Stitch 2 or 3 stitches forward and back. And continue to keep your fabric in the center of that presser foot as you turn your fabric slightly clockwise. That zigzag is wrapping around your neck edge. Continue all the way across. And once you get to the end of your neckline, add another back stitch. Here's what the finished zigzag on your neckline looks like. Take a look at that neckline. Now let's fold it back and give it a good press. We are going to add a straight stitch. 1/8 of an inch is the seam allowance. Here's a closer look at that seam allowance.
Now it's time to zigzag the back neckline. Remember, there is no pleat on our back neckline. Just be sure that you keep your fabric toward the center of your presser foot. And of course, at the end, we are going to add another back stitch. Let's give that a good press. Now we're going to fold back that neckline and press a little bit at a time. Give it a good amount of steam so that we can prepare to stitch it down. Here we are all set up, a few cinches forward and then back. And now little by little we will sew, and then we will stop, reposition the fabric, and then continue sewing our straight stitch. Stop, reposition your fabric every 3 inches or so. And this will help you to get around the neckline very nicely. Take your time, making sure to keep your eye on your fabric so that it stays to the left of your presser foot edge. And we're going to add another back stitch. Make sure your needle is up, presser foot lever up, pull out your fabric and cut your thread. Let's have a look at your handiwork. Beautiful job. Your neckline is 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and that straight stitch is in place and looking good. There's the inside of our shirt back. Let's give it a good press. Flip it over, press again, and then, oh yeah, it's time to connect the shirt front to the shirt back. So now it's time to connect the shirt front to the shirt back at the shoulders, making sure right sides are facing each other. That's our neckline. So we are going to sew the shoulders. Connect your front to your back at the shoulder. Place under the presser foot. Make sure that your fabric is slightly to the right of your presser foot. That will give you a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Lower the needle, stitch forward and back, and then continue across the shoulder seam. Make sure that you line your edges up nice and neatly, and get ready, of course, to add another backstitch. Needle in the up position, lift the lever, pull, and cut. Here's a look at our shoulder seam. Now, of course, you guessed it. Yep, we're going to give it a press. Flip it over and press again. Let's have a look. Front neckline. You can see our pleat and our shoulder seam. Now I'm going to slide this over. So that's our front neckline, shoulder seam, and now you can actually see the sleeve edge. I'm going to pull this up so that you can actually see our side seam now. That's our sleeve edge and side seam. The sleeve is all connected in one, there's no seam. That's our side seam. Now let's zigzag that shoulder seam. Place your fabric under the presser foot so that it is toward the center of the presser foot. Lower the presser foot. Turn the wheel towards you so the needle goes down. Stitch a couple stitches forward, then back, and continue zigzagging to the end of our shoulder seam. Once you get to the end, you guessed it, add another backstitch. Here's a look at our zigzagged shoulder seam. Now let's take a look. This is our shirt front pleat, right there. And our shoulder seam gets pressed towards the shirt back. Give it a good amount of steam. And let's flip it over, pressing once more for that super polished finish. Now let's repeat straight stitching the second shoulder seam. You've totally got this. And now you can repeat zigzag stitching the second shoulder seam. Don't forget to give it a good press once you're done. So here is the shoulder that we have just connected. It's straight stitched and zigzagged. Notice that the neckline is to the left. It's already finished. On the right is the sleeve edge. That's where we will begin. Place your fabric under the presser foot so that it's in the center of the presser foot. Lower the needle. A few stitches forward, a few stitches back, and continue across the length of the sleeve hem.
Notice we're getting close to that shoulder seam. We're crossing it. And we continue zigzagging to the very edge of our sleeve. Once again, add a backstitch. Perfect. All right, let's give that zigzag a good press just to flatten it. That's going to be first. And now we can press to add a fold for the hem. So go on ahead and fold it back about 1/4 of an inch and press that in place. This is so exciting. We're almost there. This is actually the hem of our sleeve. Flip it over, press the opposite side, and that'll do it. Now, just before we head to the machine, let's take another look. You can see our front neckline. Both the front and back are finished. That shoulder seam is nicely in place. And the sleeve edge has been pressed and folded back. Now here's a look at the side seam. Now let's straight stitch that sleeve hem in place. Line up your fabric so that you can stitch down nicely with it slightly to the left of the edge of your presser foot. We want to keep that hem in place. Lower the needle. Stitch a few stitches forward, then back, and now continue across the entire length of your sleeve hem. Notice that good pressing does half of the work for you. Now we're coming up on our shoulder seam. We're going to cross over and continue to the other side of our sleeve hem. And as we near the end, get ready for your back stitch. There we are, back stitch in place, and the sleeve hem is now complete. Let's have a look at our handiwork. There's that sleeve hem on the right side. And that's the shoulder seam. The hem looks great on our sleeve. And take a look at that side seam. It just has the slightest curve in the beginning and then it's straight the rest of the way down. Let's press across the entire length of our sleeve hem on the wrong side of the fabric first. Now flip it over and press the right side of the fabric at the sleeve hem. And let's take one last look at your finished sleeve hem. Now you can repeat stitching that sleeve hem for your second sleeve. Then, of course, press, press, press. So here we have our shirt front. We see the neckline and the shoulder seam are finished. The sleeve hem is also finished. Now turn slightly towards the counterclockwise direction and grab your side seam in hand. At the sewing machine, place your fabric so that it is slightly to the right of the presser foot. Lower the presser foot, lower the needle. Stitch a few stitches forward and then back. And now you are going to stitch a tiny little bit at a time and reposition. So here we are starting to sew around the curve, a few stitches, and then you slightly turn your fabric clockwise. As you continue sewing and past the curve, the rest of the way is a straight line. Reposition your fabric, continue sewing. As we near the end, add your back stitch. Make sure the wheel has the needle in the up position. Lift that presser foot lever and pull out your fabric and cut. Let's zigzag that side seam now. Lower the presser foot, turn the wheel towards you so that you can lower the needle. Stitch a few stitches forward and then back. And now clockwise direction is the way we will turn our fabric as you go around that curve. Take your time, keeping your fabric toward the center of the presser foot. And once you pass the curve, the rest of the way will be a straight line. Ah, very nice. You've got it. As you near the end, get ready for your back stitch. And that'll do it for your side seam. Let's have a look at that side seam. Give it a good press. And now let's move on to repeat this process for the other side seam. And now we're in the home stretch. Let's fold the hem of our garment and press all the way around. Make sure you give it a good amount of steam. And now we've arrived back at the beginning where we first started pressing. Do you know what we're going to do next? You guessed it, we're going to repeat this process so that we have a clean finish. And we've made it back to the beginning. Make sure that you give it a lot of steam. And guess what? All that's left to do is straight stitch it down and your shirt is done. So here we are back at the machine. Line your fabric up so that it's slightly to the right of your presser foot. Lower the presser foot and add your guide. With the fabric slightly to the right of the presser foot, this will give you a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Turn the wheel towards you so the needle is down. A few stitches forward and back. And now we're going to sew our final stitch. This is for the hem of our shirt all the way around. Add that last back stitch, and you did it! Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Give it a really quick press and then try it on. I can't wait to see it.
It looks so good. I'm so excited for you. Oh my gosh, your shirt looks amazing. I super love it. Great job. I'd love to interact with you and see and hear about some of what you've been up to. I can be reached on Instagram at Osuna. Thank you so much for taking time to join Sewing with me, Osuna. Until we meet again, happy sewing.